The flag.
For 7:30.
What?
I'm waiting for 7:30. Can't start early.
Clock or a week?
Yeah, I know, but according to our time. Good evening, everyone. Would you please join us in a salute to the flag? Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Pursuant to Section 5, Chapter 231, Public Laws, 1975, this is to state for the record that adequate notice of this meeting has been provided to the public by posting and maintaining the annual notice of regular meetings on the bulletin board of the municipal building, by mailing the annual notice of regular meetings for 2013 to the News Record and Star Ledger in December 2012, and by filing said notice in the office of the Township Clerk.
Mr. Brownlee?
Here.
Mrs. Larrier?
Here.
Mr. Leventhal?
Here.
Mr. Ryan?
Here.
Mayor DeLuca.
Here.
Whereas Chapter 231, Public Laws 1975, commonly known as the Open Public Meetings Act, requires that all meetings of public bodies be open to the public, and whereas Section 7 provides that the governing body has the discretion to permit, prohibit, or regulate the active participation of the public at any meeting, and whereas desire this governing body to comply with the provision of this act, at the same time to conduct its business in an orderly and expeditious manner, now therefore be it resolved by the Township Committee, Township of Maplewood does hereby prohibit, except as set forth in a formal agenda, active participation in the deliberations of the governing body by the public, and except as otherwise prescribed by law, does limit the public to the observation of the actions and discussion of the governing body of all its regular special meetings.
So moved.
Second.
Mr. Brownlee?
Yes.
Mrs. Larrier?
Yes.
Mrs. Leventhal?
Yes.
Mr. Ryan?
Yes.
Mayor DeLuca.
Yes. Thank you. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to our November 4th meeting. We are meeting this evening on Monday because tomorrow is Election Day, and we're urging everyone to get out to vote on Election Day tomorrow. This evening's agenda will start with a proclamation on Pancreatic Cancer Awareness Month, and we're going to have our monthly Board of Health meeting. We'll have our public comment period, anyone who would like to address the Township Committee. We'll have a hearing on terminating the redevelopment agreement and designation of Davies as the redeveloper of 1611 Springfield Avenue. We have one ordinance on final passage, and that is to modify the frequency with which we inspect rental units. We have 5 discussion items. We'll be discussing a letter we received from the softball committee. We'll be talking about the certificate of continued use and occupancy application process. We'll be discussing the post office, the relocation, the Phase 1 environmental assessment, and a request for a proposal schedule. Clinton Avenue commuter parking. Talking about the possibility of adopting an hour time limit there. And then we'll be discussing residential fences, 4 feet versus 6 feet. Our consent agenda is after that, and we have 6 items ranging from purchasing material at Buywise Auto Parts to becoming a member of the Somerset County Cooperative Pricing System, dealing with the audit, let's see, closing out installation of generators, Memorial Park wall, change order, and then also payment of bills and vouchers. Are we not doing minutes tonight?
Oh, we are, I'm sorry.
Okay,
They
we'll just add that later. We'll have our second public comment period. If anyone would like to address the Township Committee later on in the meeting. We have reports from our construction code official. We'll have administrative reports from elected officials, and then we will adjourn. So the first order of business is the proclamation on Pancreatic Cancer Awareness Month, and I'm going to invite you to come on up. Our barometer of good health. How are you? Yes. Your arm is better?
It's still there.
Okay. So, this is a special one for me. 3 years and 6 weeks ago, I was on the operating table having part of my pancreas taken out because I had a non-cancerous tumor there. I'm not going to read the whole thing because, first of all, it's too emotional to read the whole thing of how many people will die, but I'll get into some of that. But we have a survivor here, 8 years, right? And it's just an amazing, deadly disease. And luckily, mine wasn't cancerous, and I'm still here to talk about it. Yours was, and you're still here to talk about it. So we're bookends here, so that's good. So whereas an estimated 45,220 people will be diagnosed with pancreatic cancer in the United States, and 38,000 of those 45 will die from the disease, and it's one of the deadliest cancers that we have. It's the fourth leading cause of cancer deaths in the United States, and the only major cancer with a 5-year survival rate. It just is at 6%. 6% of the people survive 5 years. And basically, I know what happened to me. When your symptoms occur, it's too late. You already have it. And 73% of the pancreatic cancer patients die within the first year of diagnosis, and 94% die within the first 5 years. So the good news is that Congress has passed a Research Act, Cancer Research Act, last year, which calls on the Cancer Institute to develop a scientific framework and plan for pancreatic cancer and other deadly cancers. And there's the Pancreatic Cancer Action Network, which is a national organization serving the pancreatic cancer community, both in New Jersey and nationwide. And there's an event coming up this Sunday. In any event, we want to make sure that we stand tall with those who have had to deal with this deadly disease, the families and certainly the individuals, and just really promote our country and those who study cancer to take up the battle of pancreatic cancer, dealing with early detection, causes, and effective treatment. Therefore, I, Victor DeLuca, Mayor of the Township of Maplewood, on behalf of the Township Committee, do hereby proclaim November 2013 as Pancreatic Cancer Awareness Month in the Township of Maplewood, and call upon all of us to increase our awareness and understanding of pancreatic cancer and what we all can do to prevent and control this deadly cancer in the future. So here's a resolution. Thank you again for coming here, and why don't you say a few things?
First, on behalf of the Pancreatic Cancer Action Network and the New Jersey affiliates, and by the way, all of the affiliates throughout the country are volunteer-run. We'd like to thank the mayor and the town of Maplewood for this recognition tonight. I'm here because 2 days after Thanksgiving in 2005, I went into the emergency room with diverticulitis. And at the time, they took a scan and told me, oh, by the way, you also have a tumor in your pancreas, which is the way many people find out. Because there's no early detection, you find out either when it's very late or when you're lucky enough to have something else wrong with you and they find it. I'm one of the lucky ones, as I will be an 8-year survivor. You heard the statistic that only 6% survive for 5 years. That's just a horrible number. Every time I hear it, it just resonates in me. There's also, with the good news, unfortunately, there's always a balance that to take away from it. We passed a bill, the Recalcitrant Cancer Research Act, in Congress. It was one of only 193 bills passed in the 2 years of the last Congress, but it called on the National Cancer Institute to start to work on these strategic plans for both lung cancer and pancreatic cancer, which were the two worst recalcitrant cancers. But at the same time, funding is now down because of the budgetary constraints of the government. So even though we had good news, our budgeting is still down for research. All medical research is down. So it's important that we let our congressmen know that we need to fund medical research because it's for all of our citizens in all areas of illnesses. Also, the latest study shows that sometime by the year 2020 and possibly as early as 2015, pancreatic cancer is going to surpass breast cancer and colorectal cancer and become the second leading cause of cancer death in America. It's the only cancer where the incidences of death are continuing to rise, as well as an increase of 55% in the number of cases by the year 2020. So it's very important that we take measures now to increase awareness of this horrible disease. So this is, by receiving a proclamation here tonight, it's a step in the right direction to make awareness known in Maplewood, and hopefully you can come out and support us. We will be having our annual Purple Stride Walk this Sunday in Parsippany, and if you need any information, I believe the town has a flyer, or you can always contact me at mweinstein@pancanvolunteer.org. So thank you very much.
We're now going to move into our monthly Board of Health meeting.
Thank you. Pursuant to Section 5, Chapter 231, Public Law, 1975, this is to state for the record that adequate notice of this meeting has been provided to the public by posting and maintaining the annual notice of regular meetings on the bulletin board of the municipal building, by mailing the annual notice of regular meetings for 2013 to the News Record and Star Ledger in December of 2012, and by filing said notice in the office of the Township Clerk.
Mr. Brownlee?
Here.
Mayor DeLuca?
Here.
Mr. Leventhal? Here. Mr. Ryan?
Here.
Mrs. Larrier?
Here.
Whereas Chapter 231, Public Laws 1975, commonly known as the Open Public Meetings Act, requires that all meetings of public bodies be open to the public, and whereas Section 7 provides that the Maplewood Board of Health has the discretion to permit, prohibit, or regulate the active participation of the public at any meeting, and whereas the desire of the Maplewood Board of Health to comply with the provisions of this Act, same time to conduct its business in an orderly and expeditious manner, now therefore resolved by the Board of Health of the Township of Maplewood, does hereby prohibit, except as set forth in the formal agenda, active participation in the deliberations of the Board of Health at all its meetings, except as otherwise prescribed by law. It does limit the public to the observation of the actions and discussions of the Board of Health at all of its regular meetings.
So moved. Second.
Mr. Brownlee?
Yes.
Mayor DeLuca?
Yes.
Ms. Leventhal?
Yes.
Mr. Ryan?
Yes.
Mrs. Larrier?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, and welcome to the November Board of Health meeting. We have our agenda. I would point out last month we did say we were going to have a presentation on a trap, neuter, and release program. However, due to some logistical issues, that is now being moved to January. So, with that said, I'll take a motion on the minutes.
Move approval as distributed.
Second.
Mr. Brownlee?
Yes.
Mayor DeLuca?
Yes.
Ms. Leventhal?
Yes.
Mr. Ryan?
Yes.
Mrs. Larrier?
Yes. Mr. Rowe?
We've had a very busy month. I just want to speak to the gentleman with the pancreas cancer. As you know, as soon as we see a role for our public health agency to become involved in helping with that, we'll certainly join in. So something I'm looking forward to helping with when we find a way. Just a couple of upcoming programs. The Humane Society is going to be back here Thursday morning to do spay-neutering, and this program has turned out to be more successful than I imagined at first. They love coming to Maplewood. They're full up every time. So it's really hit a responsive chord. We'll be doing free rabies shots this Saturday from noon to 2 at the firehouse. This is because we're moving up the date for the licensing. So this is to help people get rabies shots. It's not especially a health department project, but it was started by one of our nurses, this Gratitude Graffiti project, and you may have seen information around town. But now we have a bulletin board in the town hall. It's actually right outside the door, so if you have something you want to put on a stick it and tack it to the board, we'll have our own Gratitude Graffiti board right here at the town hall. Ms. Larrier has been urging us to start a clinic in the Hilton area for people who are immigrants, or like in our adult clinic, because the thinking is maybe a lot of them don't get to go see a doctor on a regular basis. So we're going to make an effort to organize ourselves to do that type of clinic. We're thinking of doing it at the Hilton Library. We have Mrs. Larrier's help. We have a person do translation if needed. And so I'm looking forward to maybe a month from now, I'll have a plan where we'll be starting that clinic. Flu shots, we just did them. We did 210, which is a low number for us, but that's because everybody else is getting in the game for flu shots. We did do it on a break-even cost basis. The nurses started distributing the Affordable Health Care Act flyers door-to-door to small businesses, and they'll be finishing that this month.
Is it our advocacy that made the computers break
Yeah,
down?
it was. We hacked the computer. And also, just to let you know, in response to concerns about dogs running loose in the park, our animal control officer was out Saturday and Sunday in the morning checking people to make sure they didn't let their dogs run loose. So we'll continue that. And I think that's my report. And I know Ms. Leventhal had some good news.
Two things. One, just to add to the Gratitude Graffiti project, we also understand that Atlantic Health System has incorporated this into their programs, so that their 3 hospitals are now doing the Gratitude Graffiti project. So, and it's spreading to other towns also. I'd like to, again, thank everyone involved with Maplewood Loves Wellness. We were chosen to, because of our project, put an article into the New Jersey Local Board of Health Association's newsletter. So this talks about our new efforts, which include the Healthy Cooking Contest that Mr. Rowe started, and walking program, which was funded by Atlantic Health Overlook. That's it. Thanks.
Any questions for Mr. Rowe?
Yeah, can we just get some clarity on when we have the trap neuter release presentation in January, how much time are we going to allow? I've been getting some calls that 10 minutes is not sufficient. So what are we going to do?
It's our belief that 10 minutes for her presentation should certainly be sufficient. If it, of course, if it runs over because of questions, I believe that certainly we can run over. We're not going to drag her out at 10 minutes when the gong goes off. However, I think 10 minutes should certainly suffice for the actual.
And then questions and answers after that?
And then questions and answers after that.
I think there was a little confusion that questions and answers had to fit within the 10 minutes.
We'll
And you know
clarify
us,
that.
we interrupt too as people.
I've never noticed that.
We'll certainly clarify that.
Okay.
I do have two things. The ACA, the Affordable Care Act, we were looking to increase those presentations. Were you able to get in touch with the other person that we discussed?
No, I contacted the navigator and I did not get a response back, so I will I'll follow up on that to make sure she gets the message. And you said there was another person?
Yes, Diego Arias.
Oh, yes.
From New Jersey
Okay,
Citizen Action.
I'm sorry, yes.
And I know he sent me an email. I thought you were copied on it. If not, I will certainly forward it to you.
I got that information,
Okay.
I'm sorry. I
So
just
certainly
didn't get
follow
to
up
it
with
yet.
him, just to keep everybody else in the loop. We were hoping to have additional programming, as not definitely during the day, but rather earlier in the morning and in the evening to catch those people who work. And so we're looking into trying to add that. Also, on the 21st, I believe there is a Medicare presentation at the library. Is that November 21st?
Not familiar with that offhand. It's on Medicare. Oh, Part D?
Yes.
Yes, it's a special program on Part D Medicare, and so it's for people who are looking to decide to plan for Part D and what plan works best for them.
Okay, and is that going to be put on the website?
Yes.
Good, thank you. Any other questions? Then I'll take a motion to adjourn. Oh, I'm so sorry. At this point, I actually should invite the public to come and speak to the Board of Health if anyone would want to do that. Seeing no one, I will now entertain a
I
motion
move we
to-
adjourn.
Second.
Thank you.
Mr. Brownlee?
Yes.
Mayor DeLuca?
Yes.
Ms. Leventhal?
Yes.
Mr. Ryan?
Yes.
Mrs. Larry?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, we are back on the main agenda. And by the way, if you'd like an agenda, we have them up here. Feel free to come on up and get one. We now are at item number 7, which is public comment, which is the first public comment of the evening. You can come up and get some. Is there anyone who would like to address the Township Committee? We ask you to come up to the microphone and give us your name and address or your affiliation.
Good evening. My name is Bruce Shapiro with the New Jersey Association of Realtors, 295 Pearson Avenue in Edison. I want to thank you tonight for discussing a little later on in your agenda the issue concerning certificates of continued use and occupancy. I have with me Bob Bailey-Lemansky, the president of our West Essex Board of Realtors. As you may know, earlier this year, the West Essex Board and New Jersey Association met with municipal officials here to raise concerns about the current ordinance, whereas it places the responsibility to apply for and obtain the CCUO on the buyer rather than the seller. The only reason we raised this concern was because in almost every other municipality that we're aware of, both here in Essex County and around the state, it's actually the seller's responsibility to apply for this and obtain the certificate, which we did send comments more in detail to the committee earlier this month, last month. Given that in every other municipality that has this requirement, it's the seller's responsibility, we believe, and we have asked the Township Committee to consider making a change to Section 204 of your ordinance to bring Maplewood's code in line with what other towns, both here in Essex County and across the state, do. As you would see in that letter, which we have copies if you do need, placing the responsibility on sellers to apply for these could occur without changing Maplewood's objectives to ensure that properties are safe to transfer from one party to another, and to know who will be buying and moving into that property once it's sold. This could be done by allowing the seller to apply for the CCUO, but not having the municipality actually issue it until they know who's going to move into the property, and this occurs in local towns in the area, including South Orange, West Orange, and Newark, for example. So with that, I know we'd like to keep it brief because you do have a lengthy agenda. I would turn it over to Bob, but I'd also be happy to answer any questions that the governing body may have.
Why don't we hear from him first?
Hi, thank you for the opportunity to present this. I think what it comes down to is that closings can get delayed when it's the buyer's responsibility to apply for the certificate of occupancy. If the seller could apply for the CO in Maplewood, it would allow for more time to correct any violations, close any open permits, and have any necessary re-inspections, possibly even before we have a buyer. When we wait until the buyer is found, the CO process has to wait also, making it difficult to close quickly. And we had heard during the meeting that it was important to the township, that it seems like a really important part of the buyer applying was that the town would know who the buyers are. And one solution that Bruce just mentioned is perhaps there could be a process where the seller actually does the applying, and if the seller knows who the buyer is at the time, great, they can put it on the form. But if the seller does not know who the buyer is, it could just be a condition upon issuance of the certificate that the township find out, meaning the seller won't get the necessary document to close without supplying the information to the township. And that's really what it comes down to, so thank you very much.
But let me ask you a question on that. The reason that a seller would want to get a certificate is so that they could represent to a buyer that whatever the use is permitted, correct?
Part of it. I mean, it's required by the township
right.
that a CO is issued.
So I'm just looking for the, so when you say that the certificate would be conditional on you informing us who the buyer is, it seems to me that that's going to be a problem because you as the seller are going to want to, how are you going to, if you're not getting the certificate, how are you representing that the use is going to be permitted? So if I'm buying it from you, you tell me, okay, yeah, it was a restaurant before, it's a restaurant now, don't worry about it. And you don't have a certificate of continued use.
The certificate is necessary in order to close. So when the seller is preparing the house to sell,
right.
The way it stands now is the seller doesn't apply, the buyer actually applies.
Right.
So the inspections are the same, everything is the same. It's just we're requesting that it's the seller's responsibility,
I understand
not the
that.
buyer's
Okay.
responsibility.
All right. Okay. Anybody else have a question? Yes, Ms. Leventhal.
So actually, this all happens earlier in the process than later.
It's best. That's what we're used to in other municipalities, is that when I'm helping a seller prepare a house to sell, one of the things we want to make sure there's no violations and make sure there's not going to be a problem with the CO. So it's great when we can have the city inspector in early, maybe even before we have the buyer, and that's not possible in Maplewood.
Thank you.
You're suggesting that this be a change for both residential and commercial property?
Bruce could speak to that. As a realtor, I only deal with residential.
Okay.
So,
I do know that when we sat down with Mr. Manning, the issue that we heard from most of our realtors was strictly tied around the residential aspect. I don't think we heard anyone mention the commercial side. Obviously, if the governing body was to consider a change and they wanted to do residential and commercial at the same time, obviously that's something that would have to be looked at as well, and we could definitely be considered.
And are you saying, because we have to get a CCUO when there's a rental change too? So what about a rental as opposed, you're just talking about sales?
It would be the landlord.
well, again, it would be great if the landlord could have the property ready, inspected and ready, so that way, for example, sometimes we put a rental on the market and we find a tenant the first day. And sometimes the tenant needs a place to move. And if the landlord then has to apply to the township, it can certainly delay occupancy, delay income for the landlord, but also delay the possession date of the tenant.
It's a purchaser or lessor. So the landlord has the obligation to do it in a rental situation.
Okay.
The landlord already has the obligation in a rental situation.
Right, but what I'm not clear of, because I wasn't prepared to speak about rentals, but what I'm not clear of is, does the landlord need to know who the tenant is prior to applying for the CCUO?
I don't have the form of that they they use, but my assumption is probably yes.
Okay, so if they do need to know who the tenant is, then that's probably more critical than even the purchase, because possession dates need to be really quick for renters.
Well, we'll digest what you said and talk about it a little later.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who wants to address the Township Committee? Yes. You got to come up here. Yeah. Yes.
So I know many of you. I'm Erin Scherzer. I live on Oberlin Street. It's such a pleasure to be able to speak before you guys today. My neighborhood, we learned on last Monday that the post office is moving to the corner of our street, corner of Oberlin and Springfield, in the old car wash. Our neighbors have informally met, and we are excited about such positive change, not only coming to our immediate block, but also to the overall picture of Springfield, development picture of Springfield Avenue. We do have a number of questions regarding some of the changes that will come into place with respect to the post office, namely the increased traffic. While we may be a block of just 15 houses, our block represents over 20 children. We have many children that come and visit our area, and we just want to make sure that it's a safe and inviting community for our kids. It's also a pass-through area for children going to the Tuscan School, and we just want kids to be safe at that period of time. So I don't know if it's something for a matter of kind of like a public discussion, or if the developer who's redesigning that site on behalf of the post office would like to meet with us, just so we have a sense of where the trucks are going to park, where the consumers are going to park. We want this to work, to be a two-way street, but we also want our neighborhood to stay strong and as positive as it is.
Well, the answer, let me just give you a quick answer, and I'll talk more about it later, but the quick answer is that all we have is a letter from the post office saying that they've looked at 3 sites in Maplewood, and this is the site that they're going to seek to secure a lease to locate. We haven't had any conversation with them. We haven't seen any plans. I'm not even sure talk about continued use, if there would have to be a planning board review, or if this is a continued use of retail, which was there before as retail. So there's a lot of things that we're not sure of yet, and it would be incumbent upon either the post office or the owner of the property to come before I guess the planning board at some point, if there's a site plan that's required. If there isn't, then I think it's a more informal process, and we can set those meetings up and get that. But right now, we do not have any information about that, about the operation, because we have not yet seen a lease yet. I think I mentioned at the meeting at the church that they're a very difficult entity to work with, the post office.
Right.
There's a 30-day period now, so hopefully at the end, after Thanksgiving, we will be able to do a little bit more with them. Okay. But right now, there's a lock on the only input you can, and actually that's what you can do. There's a letter, and we can get you a copy of the letter that we received, and it says that there's a 30-day period of comments. Okay. So you can comment about it and share some of those comments. It says any member of the community may offer written comments on this or any of the above properties. So you can comment on 1830 Springfield Avenue. That's the address.
Oh, great.
And you can share some of those comments, and I can give you the information. I can email you the contact person.
We're meeting, our group of 15, we're meeting this Wednesday.
Yeah, well, they're not going to act that fast.
More than email.
Yeah.
Halloween night wasn't sufficient. So.
Yeah, I will send the information to you, but this is a 30-day period. Let's see, in the next 30 days, so that was October 28th. So we're assuming sometime after
around Thanksgiving.
After Thanksgiving, we'll be able to have more substantive conversations with them.
Okay, well, we appreciate it and look forward to being involved.
Mr. Manning?
Mayor, maybe we'll put that letter on our website.
That's
and
fine. You have
alert
it?
people.
You have a copy, right?
Yes, I do.
Okay. Okay, but I'll email it to you. We'll also put it on the website, too. I just want to, well, I'll say it later. I'll say something later about the post office. Anyone else want to address the Township Committee? Yes. Yep. Say your name and address and...
Selena Sachs, 24 Overlook Terrace, Maplewood. I have something for you to peruse, that's all. And I would like you to look at it. And she is available, Michelle Lerner is available if you have any questions about this.
Right, so she's going to come in January.
January.
We're going to give her 10 minutes and plus questions and answers.
But if she is in the middle of a presentation, you are not going to interrupt her, I trust.
We're going to give her 10 minutes and plus questions and answers. So, you know, it was ironic. After I spoke to you on the phone in yesterday's Star Ledger in the business section, there's an article from Steve Adubato who talks about public speaking, and it is exactly on this point. If someone says to you, you have 10 minutes to do your presentation, then you fit your presentation in 10 minutes. So you heard tonight, we're going to do, she can do the presentation for 10 minutes, and we'll add the question and answer on top of that.
Okay. If you have questions, please, okay?
Anyone else? Okay, there'll be another time. We're going to close this public comment period. There'll be another time after where people can make comments. We're now going to move into a hearing on terminating the redevelopment agreement and designation of Davies 14 LLC as redeveloper of 1611 Springfield Avenue, Block 31.05, lots 1 and 3.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of the committee. My name is Joseph Vena, V-E-N-A. I represent the developer Davies, and we're here to update the council, or committee. Is this committee? Committee, sorry. Update the committee as to where we are and where we're going. Based upon the information that I received from my clients, Mr. Mittermeier has approved the status of the application. There were a number of issues that had to be addressed from the meeting last month with respect to some conditions on the neighbor's property, all of which the developer has addressed and has presented to Mr. Mittermeier. And there was also an issue regarding public service, and that was also resolved and presented to Mr. Mittermeier. It's my understanding that Mr. Mittermeier is in the process of issuing the foundation permits? Footing and foundation permits. This project can be commenced. If the permits are issued, when the permits are issued, my client has indicated to me that if they're issued this week, depending on Mr. Mittermeier's schedule, they'll begin work beginning of next week. I hope that addresses the items that were brought up at the last meeting, and we've satisfied the concerns of the council, committee, as to this developer proceeding.
Mr. Desiderio.
I have with me Matt Vereb from the developer.
Thank you. Mr. Desiderio, I believe you were the recipient of an email that I was copied on from Mr. Mittermeier informing us that, in fact, they have met the conditions for the foundation and footings.
Yes, yes, Mayor, that is correct. I received 2 emails from Mr. Mittermeier.
Can you move that closer?
Yeah, I'm sorry. I received 2 emails from Mr. Mittermeier. The first one was on October the 28th. This is my response to Mr. Vena and Davies on October 8th of the last meeting. The major issue is the need to alter the services of the adjacent property in order to construct the footings, foundation, easterly wall, etc. And then October 31st, I received an email. I have reviewed that which was submitted by Matt Verp, is it Verp? Verep, I'm sorry, of Davies' office, and have concluded that the parties have worked out an agreement on the issues associated with the adjacent property. I can release a permit for footings and foundation only at this point. The remaining issues will have to be completed as work progresses, if it does. So he is, in fact, saying that the issue of the footings and foundation permit are going to be issued shortly.
Okay. Members of the Township Committee, one of the conditions that we set forth at the last, a month ago, was that they came back ready to get the permit, and we're hearing tonight that they are about to get that permit. And we're also hearing representation that you can start within 10 days of getting the permit?
That's correct.
Okay. Is there any weather condition that would prevent you from doing anything?
We get another superstorm.
Yeah, no, I mean, you can do concrete in cold weather?
Yeah, as long as the temperature is, I think, they like to say 28 degrees and rising.
Yeah, okay, well, we're all hoping for that, above 28. Members of the Township Committee, we were to decide whether to terminate the redevelopment agreement this evening. Based on the information that we have before us, seems like this is an issue that I'll have to move forward with.
Yeah, I would suggest what's the proper way to do this is to move to adjourn the hearing without action?
Well, I mean, I think one of the things are, and just as, you know, we obviously have some issue as to the job progressing. Now, what Mr. Mittermeier has said, and I think the gentleman has agreed, is that they still have issues that are going to have to be going forward. So you're going to get footings and a foundation. And what's the intent on the progress, I guess, is really the question. Can you give the committee some sense of what you hope is going to be the progress on this, and when you're going to have a building up and close it, et cetera? I'm not trying to pin you down specifically, but obviously there's been a significant delay from the start of this. So can you give us some idea of where it's going? Because I don't think that the footings and foundation being there for a prolonged period of time is going to satisfy the committee. I'm going to take a chance on putting that in words in your mouth, but that's my sense. So rather than you be here again, can you give the committee some sense of the job progress?
Okay, yeah, we're ready to start the footing and foundations. They will take approximately 3 weeks. We have already gone ahead and released the structural steel subcontractor to begin his shop drawings and procurement of the materials. We're hoping that we'll have steel on the site within about 5 weeks. Okay, that will most likely take a week or two to erect, sure, and then we'll be able to begin the masonry work and the carpentry work and the wood framing for the apartments up above.
There's a suggestion in Mr. Mittermeier's email that there may be some continuing issues with the neighbor. Is that, am I misreading that, or you have all your issues with the neighbor resolved?
We met with the neighbor. He was very cooperative, and I believe that we resolved them to everybody's satisfaction.
So you don't anticipate that's going to be, hold on, Mr. Vina, I'm sorry.
No, I heard your email. I didn't hear from that there were issues with the neighbor.
Okay.
I assumed there might be construction issues, but from what I've been told by my clients, and confirm this if it's true, you met with the neighbor. The issues that were raised at the meeting a month ago, you're taking care of with the neighbor's consent with respect to the items that were raised.
Correct.
And I think the proof is in the pudding. I don't believe Mr. Mittermeier would have proceeded to the point of saying I'm going to issue permits unless he was satisfied that those issues were resolved.
Let me so assuming weather conditions are okay and there's not a steel strike or something else, you anticipate this building progressing to final construction in the normal course. You don't anticipate any delays?
No, we anticipate working continuous through the project once we get started.
If I may ask, Mr. Vina, because I think it would be a good idea, if in fact there are delays that are caused for reasons, okay, if your client would let you know and then you in turn let me know so I could let the committee know, so they're not, they're unaware of what the status is, because this has dragged on for a long time.
That's certainly something that we wouldn't have a problem with. I mean, like, just let's assume for some crazy reason there's a strike and they can't get their steel. We'll let you know. But if something is going to, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but if something is going to disrupt normal, usual, accepted construction schedule, you'll let me know so I can let the township know.
Of course.
Just so we remind ourselves, the agreement we have with you says that you have to start construction 30 days after receipt of the building permit. So the clock starts to tick as soon as you get that permit from Mr. Mittermeier, and you have 18 months after the initial building permit to finish this project.
Okay. It'll be done long before that, Mayor.
I hope so.
No doubt.
Well, the sooner they get done, the sooner they start getting their revenue, so.
Well, I'm just saying what we did in the agreement. We would certainly, you guys are way behind, so we certainly would like to see it expedited.
Okay.
And we'll work with you whatever you have to do to get it going.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So what do we need to do?
So
I don't think
I would simply suggest that this hearing be adjourned without date. A motion to adjourn the hearing without date.
It's so moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Who's called the roll?
Mr. Brownlee?
Yes.
Mrs. Larrier?
Yes.
Ms. Leventhal?
Yes.
Mr. Ryan?
Yes.
Mayor DeLuca?
Yes, thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Here we have an ordinance on final passage.
Mr. Mayor, item number 10, ordinance on final passage, ordinance number 2737-13. It's an ordinance to modify the frequency of rental inspections and to amend Chapter 209 of the Code of the Township of Maplewood entitled Rental Properties. This ordinance will modify the frequency within which rental units must be inspected within the Township of Maplewood.
This ordinance has been published, copies posted on the bulletin board in the municipal building, and copies made available to the general public in accordance with the law. Is there anyone who would like to speak on this ordinance? Seeing no one, we'll close the hearing, and Ms. Leventhal, can I get a motion?
Mr. Mayor, I move this ordinance be adopted as a whole and the clerk be directed to publish the same as a passed ordinance in the Maplewood South Orange News Record according to law.
Second.
Any discussion? This comes out of our Code Enforcement Committee, correct?
Yes, it does. It changes the inspections to every 2 years unless there's an outstanding violation or a reported violation.
Great.
Period.
Okay. Please call the roll.
Mr. Brownlee?
Yes.
Mrs. Larrier?
Yes.
Ms. Leventhal?
Yes.
Mr. Ryan?
Yes.
Mayor DeLuca?
Yes. Okay, we're up at our discussion items. First up is the letter from the softball committee. Mr. Mann, are you handling this? Is Mr. Knudsen coming up?
I'm going to ask Mr. Knudsen to come up and take the podium, please.
Where's he going to take it?
Take it.
Take it.
Take it. Take the podium.
I've got the podium.
So you've seen the letter. The softball committee is requesting that they go private, nonprofit.
Right, and we have some softball people here.
Oh, we do?
Yes, yes. Okay.
Okay.
So why don't you give us a quick, you've seen the letter.
Okay. Well, obviously you're all aware that the Recreation Department for a number of years now has had a softball program operating. And operating with many volunteers, it makes it as successful as it is. It operates under a trust fund, which means that all the revenues they bring in pay for all the expenses that go out. So they are a self-sufficient program that's run through our department, very successfully, I might add. The Recreation Department currently collects all the registration fees, pays the bills, and collects the revenues. The softball volunteers do rest of the groundwork, which includes organizing the coaches. They will coordinate the players. They will sign up for the leagues. They basically operate the entire softball organization, which they do a wonderful job on. More recently, they were interested in trying to expand what it is they do, and they're looking for other opportunities, including maybe increasing funding by maybe seeking out their own grants as a nonprofit, possibly some fundraising, and they also want a little bit more freedom to be able to pay their officials directly versus waiting the amount of time it takes, obviously, for our bill-paying methods to go through in order to be able to do that. So in general, I think with the entire history of the softball organization, they've done a great job, and they feel they've gotten a lot larger, and they'd like to become their own sports organization instead of a program under the Recreation Department. I think the idea makes sense. I certainly am supportive of it, and I can see a lot of good things happening from a move from them becoming their own private organization from a program in our department.
What other programs would this be similar to?
The closest things I have to it would be basketball that we run. We also have a wrestling program also within the department. I would say the difference would be in terms of size. Softball tends to be a lot larger than these other programs that I have.
So the wrestling program is run by the Cougars, or?
No, the wrestling program is run by my department.
By your department, so it isn't?
Oh, you're asking
I'm asking
for,
you something similar to being run by a nonprofit.
My apologies, I misunderstood. I think you meant my department. The closest thing I would say would be like the Cougar soccer program would be a nonprofit. They come, they use our fields, but they run as an independent organization, but they're still the primary provider of that sport.
Anyone? Yes.
Yeah. What does this do to their ability or their priority as far as getting fields?
They actually asked me the same question when they first were approaching me on this idea, and the same as the Cougar soccer program, we would not be looking to start any other softball programs. So they would still be the first priority for our department to schedule to make sure that we have all of the appropriate fields assigned to them. That way, as they come in and ask for the different assignments, they'd be able to, as normal, have their practices, their games, and their scrimmages.
Sorry, when a nonprofit comes in and uses our fields, do they pay a fee or do they not if they're based in Maplewood? Or?
If they're based in Maplewood and they're the only provider of the sport, or rather the one that we recognize as providing us a particular sport for the residents, we consider that a benefit to the residents of the township, and we don't charge them. We consider that you know, the only sport that we recognize that's considered Maplewood's sport. You know, so if Cougar Soccer is a nonprofit and they're coming in and using that field, we don't charge them a fee. Whereas if somebody outside of town was bringing out-of-towners mixed in with other residents of the town, would be charged a fee.
Mr. Brownlee?
Just one logistical question, and I just don't know how this works. If a resident has a child who wants to participate in the program when it's run under the auspices of the recreation department, they pay the fee. You know, they're on a team, if you would. Does that change at all if it is run by a private entity as opposed to recreation department? In other words, you follow my question?
You're asking if there's a way that they won't be able to put in the same kind of team if this changes from a nonprofit versus...
I'm just asking for on an individual child basis, if they wanted to be, if it was run under the auspices of the recreation department, child wants to be in the program, if the fees are paid, they get to participate.
Yes, this would still be a recreation program. It's not something that would be in terms of travel or tryout. It would still, they would have the ability to, as normal, sign up, pay their fee, and their child be able to participate.
Okay, so this wouldn't be a tryout type of thing where kids might not be able to participate.
Well, they do have a tryout period in the fall, but that's for fall ball. But that's always been that way even under my department. There is the regular recreational programming, which during the spring everyone is entitled to play.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear the last part. Maybe it's the sound.
Everyone's entitled to play in the spring when they're signing up for the recreation softball, and it will continue that way.
Okay, all right. I just want to see if there are any changes. And so you're saying in the fall, actually, even now, there are tryouts and cuts, if you would. But in the spring, there's not tryouts. Everybody can play.
Correct.
And that would not change.
That will not change.
Okay.
I have one more question. If they're not run under the auspices of our local rec departments, how would it continue to serve our residents? What's to keep suddenly it's a nonprofit and they are outside and bringing in other, because now we don't really run them anymore.
Well, as a nonprofit, they do have a little bit more freedom to be able to do things like that. But when we're telling them they're coming in to use our fields as top priority, we do have some say in terms of who they're allowed to bring in. And we can tell them that they would have to stick with the same residency requirements that we currently have in place, which, by the way, is Maplewood and South Orange. We do serve both townships currently.
Yeah, but there's always exceptions made in circumstances like this. I mean, my boys were in soccer for a very long time, and there was the occasional West Orange kid here and there. I think our concern should be that every Maplewood South Orange kid that wants to participate is able to and is not excluded at the expense of somebody from out of town. So I don't think we need to say nobody from out of town's allowed, but I think we do need to say something about priorities.
Just want to, and forgive me, basic information, but in the spring ball, is there a fee associated with
yeah,
playing in the spring? Now, currently under the Recreation Department?
Yes. The current spring fee, I believe, is $95, which I'm going to see if I can find it here. Yeah, the spring fee, I believe, is $95 per participant. And for the travel, depends on the age. It can be about $120 to $200, depending on the grade level they're in.
Okay. I'm thinking, again, in terms of the, I guess the basic one, the $95, which is non-travel, if I'm hearing you correctly.
Correct. That's recreation.
I don't know if any talk has been completed regarding the fees for the private entity. Would it be, in your expectation, essentially similar?
In my discussions with them, their entire plan is to make it seamless so that nobody even recognizes the difference when they become a nonprofit. They want the fees to stay the same. They want the registration process to stay the same. They want the volunteers to stay the same. In essence, they don't want anything to change either. They want to make sure that nobody even notices the difference from when it moves from one to the next.
Okay.
But that's now. There's nothing in the agreement that would prevent that from changing in 3 years, correct?
No.
But there's nothing today that said we might not raise our fees next year. Or
no,
true, but one's under the auspices of us,
right.
So we have some say over that, as opposed to a private entity, which obviously is independent and can do what they want.
Right. We vote every year or every so many years on fees.
True.
So,
what do we do for Cougar Soccer? Who establishes the fees for that?
The Cougar Soccer.
Cougar Soccer.
Yeah. So, I mean, if they price themselves out of the game, we could always come in and re-establish our own programs.
Well, I don't know. I don't know what the agreement says. So, you know, we have. It sounds like we have a non-compete clause. Right?
Well, in terms of priority for the field, but if we decide to establish our own, that would change.
Would we be able, I don't know if this is legal, would we be able to have some say in what their bylaws look like and some representation on their board?
Mr. Desiderio, this is a legal question?
That's who I'm waiting for.
Well, I guess the first question I had is the 501c3 formed?
I don't believe it's been formed yet.
Okay. I mean, what would be interesting to see is what their charter actually says and what the charitable purpose is. I mean, that would be the first thing that I'd want to see.
I mean,
I'm sorry, I don't know. Is this? It
Yeah,
is working.
it is
I guess
working.
I got to get really close. I would very much like to see what their charitable purpose is, and I mean, it seems to me they have to get their 501c3 status before any of this can take place. So, you know, it might be that they should do that and then come back, show what the charter says, and see if that is consistent with the purposes of what you would like to see.
Yes, go ahead.
I think we have a very successful model on our hands if we look at the Cougar Soccer Club, right? So, I mean, from where I sit, and maybe it's just because my kids were in Cougar Soccer for such a long time, but if somebody came to me with an organizational model structured in the same way that the Cougar Soccer Club was structured, with an agreement with the town structured in the same way that the Cougar Soccer Club agreement is structured, I wouldn't have any problem going along with it. But I'd want to see it modeled after that other very successful organization.
Mm-hmm. Could we go ahead?
No, and understood what you're saying, and I'm generally amenable to the idea, but I just want to make sure. Again, I didn't have kids who went through Cougar Soccer. Okay, I want to make sure that it's as seamless as possible, as you put it, and that every child in Maplewood continues to have the opportunity to participate in the sport, and that doesn't go away either by virtue of, you know, tryouts, cuts, fees, or anything like that that's going to preclude them from participating in the program. Obviously, when it's under the auspices of the Recreation Department, we have some control over the variables that might affect that. When it becomes a private entity, we lose that to a certain extent. I'm generally amenable to the idea, but I just want to, I'd like to maybe see that as well, just to kind of understand that a little bit better. So I'm okay, but I'd just like some assurance.
Is there somebody, well, hold on. Is there, like, I know 5 of you signed this. Is there someone who can speak for all 5 of you? Then you come on up and you can, this is your first test of democracy. Just give us your name and that your address and representing the softball committee.
David Garaband, 74 Kendall Ave in Maplewood.
And you're representing the...
I am representing the softball committee. I am the senior member. I've been there the longest. I think I've been there 12 years. When we took over the program from the rec department as volunteers, I was part of the original group with Hank Zona, Jerry O'Connor, Renee Collin, Chris Dixon, and their kids have moved on, and now I continue to do this since I have 3 daughters and they choose to play softball. Tonight I'm here with Howard, Alex, Lara, and Cindy, and that's the committee as of right now.
So you heard some of the questions we had,
Sure,
and
yeah.
could you give us a little update of where you are on the process of the 501c3?
Well, the meeting tonight was to see how the Township Committee would react to our letter and see your ideas about moving forward. We can present that, we can go to our lawyer and come up with the 501c3 so you guys can see what our plan and what our agenda is for the rec program. With your positive feedback and saying, hey, go ahead and do it. We didn't want to initiate that with, if there was resistance from the committee, but we're in place to do that. We can bring that at the next meeting or whenever you want us to do that.
Questions, anyone?
Well, only this suggestion that Mr. Ryan regarding trying to model it after soccer.
That's the program is modeled after softball. It's modeled after getting girls to play. I know Cougar Soccer is successful. I know other programs are successful in town. What we basically did is we took a program of 80 girls and turned it into 325. And we created an opportunity for girls through sports to travel, to play in town, to have a good time, to get parents to volunteer. I don't know if any of the committee or anybody in town has come to our softball day when we have it at the end of the year. We have 800 parents, 400 kids at Maple Crest playing softball, and that's our goal. And that's the rec league. And then we decided to create a travel program for the kids that wanted a little bit more in the summer, and from that we created 7 teams. We play in June and July. So the program has grown, and we have tryouts, but we invite everybody. We started with U10, U12, U14. Now we have U8. We have 8-year-old girls playing softball up and down the parkway in the summer. So the program has grown. Now we go to the fall. We went from being March, April, and May to June, July. August, we all go on vacation, and then we start all over in the fall. Then we just finished our last tournament yesterday in 40-degree weather. And then we take a month off, and then in January we start clinics. So we're going all year round. And through this, we invite college coaches. We have relationships with coaches. They come down and they talk to the parents. They talk to the kids. We had a successful camp this summer with Roy Cortman from LIU and St. John's in town. And we work with Seton Hall. So we're combining our 2 communities of Maplewood, South Orange, and we're getting everybody involved. And seeing it grow is amazing, especially for the fathers. They're like, my little girl can hit the ball. And it's a great feeling. And that's how the program, so our model is everybody plays, everybody has fun, and we keep growing. And even to expand a little, towns have come to us. I've been getting calls. What makes your program work? Milburn, towns down the shore. Because rec is not fun anymore. That's why we're not Cougar Soccer, because Cougar Soccer is more of a elite travel program for the better players. We're more of a, we're a program that we want the rec kids to play, and we want our better kids to stay in town and play. A lot of the elite players in today's world, they decide to go somewhere else. We need to play college softball. So we make all the good players, and we make it fun for everybody. And the best thing in the world is to see a girl, or an athlete, excuse me, that has no business playing, is just there, and then she gets that special hit off that talented player, and the parents are in tears. And that's what we do, and that's what Softball Day is about, creating an environment at Maple Crest Park where everybody's having a good time. And you guys should come down, because to see the park filled with parents and watching T-ball and watching the kids come down, it's a great feeling. And that's what we do, and that's what we've done.
Thank you.
What is your timeline?
We like to get this going for this upcoming season, so it would be before January registration.
Yeah,
so from now until...
It's unlikely you're going to get...
Oh, you're
not going to get a 501c3 before then. So...
Not because of us. Yeah. And not because it has nothing to do...
Yeah, but it's retroactive when it's retroactive
the New Jersey
when it's applied for.
All right.
So, but I guess the, you know, the question is, are we, do we have some interest in seeing this happen? And
Yes.
You're looking for some kind of
I need your
sense from us.
Yes, I need the committee to say, hey, you know, I think they can do it. I think it's possible. Nothing will change. It will be a seamless moving from rec to us, and it gives us more flexibility as a program.
So, I guess the question for us is, over whatever period of time it's going to take, is this the direction we want to move towards? And Mr. Manning, do you have an opinion on this?
I think it's a very good idea. Obviously, they grew the program. I mean, it was a recreation program, but it's really grown because of them. They want to take it to, be able to get grants, to be able to get outside money, maybe sponsorship, who knows.
Okay.
Seems to me to be a good idea. I think it would be useful to refer this, to have this process in parallel and, sort of push this back on our Recreation Advisory Committee. Let them look at it in some depth and give us a report back as well. I think that might be helpful for us.
Are you suggesting we not give them a signal tonight? Or
no, I'm suggesting we give them a signal tonight and also get, because we're giving you a signal that, I think we're giving you a signal that we think it's a good idea. We're going to have to work out some details and understand, the specifics. So as we work out those specifics, let's engage our rec department and our rec advisory people.
Are you making that into a motion?
Yes.
I'll second that.
Is there any discussion? Further discussion? So the motion is that it is the sense of the Maplewood Township Committee that we should move forward with this plan, and that we want to engage our Recreation Committee as a resource to monitor it, evaluate it, talk to us about it, make course corrections, that will instruct our staff to work with you all to make this happen. So that's the motion.
That's the motion.
Kind of long, but that's the motion.
I thought I said it much more succinctly.
Yeah, you did.
I seconded his motion.
Yes, you did. Call the roll, please.
Mr. Brownlee?
Yes.
Mrs. Larrier?
Yes.
Mr. Leventhal?
Yes.
Mr. Ryan?
Yes.
Mayor DeLuca?
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Thank you.
Did you talk to South Orange yet?
Yes, they're on board.
Okay. Good thing you didn't tell us that. Okay.
Thank you.
All right. And this is what we have the big audience for, the Certificate of Continued Use and Occupancy. Mr. Manning, you're handling this conversation?
Yes, and I think we should send it over to the committee who works with Mr. Mittermeier because he was at the meeting. He thought it was a good idea. He just wants to make sure that in the end they know who the actual buyer is for their records. And
according to his letter, he doesn't think it's a good idea.
What? Well, that's... Uh-oh. No, I didn't read his letter, but I was at the meeting.
You might want to, if you're going to speak for him, you might.
Because at the meeting, he felt that this was something that could be done, and it would not be a major impediment to what he needed to have.
Right, and this is October 18th. He says that it's his opinion that the ordinance should remain as written.
Yes.
On page.
Is this the? Wait. Okay.
His memo of 10/18.
I did not see that. I'm sorry.
Okay. In any event, let's see if the Township Committee has any feelings about this, based on what we heard. I am particularly interested in, if we were to move in this direction of separating the process for commercial and residential. Do you see any problem with that, Mr. Desiderio? No. Okay.
I remember when we put this thing in place, and I think when we put this thing in place, we were one of the first people to do it. So what I heard was other people have done it, other people, you know, it's a good idea, other people have done it, and in a lot of other places, they've done it slightly differently, and it works just fine. You know, I was fine with us being the outlier when we were one of the first ones to do it, but if we're an outlier now and other people are doing it in a slightly different way and it's working more efficiently, I'm certainly willing to investigate if we could make things more efficient.
I guess I'm concerned that, you know, as a buyer, you become responsible to get this, and it's just another hurdle that you have to go
exactly
over.
to turning a house over and getting a new person
and
in.
that the seller's incentive is to make this happen, and it might be easier to put the responsibility on the seller, as being suggested by the Board of Realtors.
Right.
But I'm absolutely not interested in any change to the commercial side. I think I've said that 5 times now, but Ms. Leventhal.
I see it not just in terms of the paper process, but I do believe that this kind of responsibility sits with the seller, because the seller has been the owner of the property and responsible for that property. So if there are reasons that a CCUO would not be issued, seller would be responsible. So I think it starts with the seller. And
Mr. Desiderio, you were here and wrote this ordinance when we put it in place.
It actually predates me, right, Mr. Ryan?
Really?
Apparently it doesn't predate you, but it does predate me.
Is there anything?
I'm looking at the code. It looks like it was adopted in 1992. I didn't come on board until 1994, so that's when you were in a minority on the
Yes,
on the council.
yes. I mean, I remember an extensive discussion about, you know, should we make the seller get it? Should we make the buyer get it? That, you know, that was 22 years.
Let me, if I may, because I do real estate in my practice, and I will say that this is the only municipality that I know of that requires the purchaser to secure the certificate.
Right.
Every other municipality requires a seller, and I will tell you that at some point, and I can't remember when, I had some discussion with regard to this, and I remember Mr. Liebman was on the committee at the time, so just to date it. And one of the issues at that time was, well, if they don't get it and the seller is gone, who is it we're going to summons? And that was the rationale, okay? And I don't know if you have any recollection of that, Mr. Ryan.
That is right. Yeah, but, you know, but the way the ordinance is written right now, the buyer gets a summons if they don't get it.
Yeah, but the buyer is going to be the one purchasing the house.
Yeah.
So they're going to be around. And that was the rationale.
Is to know who the buyer was.
For why it was done this way back then. Now, I don't know that other municipalities have actually run into any issue with regard to it. I will say that I discount the issue of the quick closing. The bottom line is, if the realtors know that Maplewood requires it to be done this way, then they should deal with that. And really, it is the realtors who generate the getting this thing done.
So how would you deal with the I guess equally important goal here of capturing information of who's moving in here, who's the new person?
Well, I think I will tell you that my experience is that sellers in other municipalities do not get them 3 months before they have a contract. Nobody gets it until there's a contract, and usually within the last week or two before the closing. And that's just a general practice. I mean, I think the issue really is what information is required on the form. If Mr. Mittermeier has a form that requires that the name of the purchaser be placed on the form, I think it captures the information that you're looking for. So I would think the form would simply need to be modified to some small extent to indicate that information on there. And if in fact the seller, if that closing doesn't move forward, then the seller would have to resubmit and put the new name in. Understand, this is basically a zoning certificate. I mean, basically that's all they're doing. Unless they go there and see some gross violation, they're not going through like an FHA inspection to find major construction problems. They're just looking at it being used as a one-family house, as being used as a two-family house. So that's really what the purpose of this is from a zoning standpoint. So, but you know, generally speaking, the seller is the one that's required to secure.
And do you agree with Ms. Leventhal that the seller is responsible and should be responsible?
I do.
I mean, the initial motivation, I remember, was somebody bought a house, they were told it was a legal two-family house, and then discovered that it wasn't. And this was the only mechanism to make sure that that sort of thing didn't happen again.
Any other opinion? Mrs. Larrier? Mr. Brownlee?
No, you took all my laugh lines already.
Okay.
Laugh lines? Right.
Yeah, you know, I wasn't around when the building was built either, you know, so.
So I'm in agreement with Ms. Leventhal that we ought to switch it to the seller for residential properties. Yes. Mr. Ryan, you there?
Yeah, absolutely. Just based on what we heard from council.
Yeah, I mean, logically it seemed to make sense. Again, I don't know what the original intent was. I heard a little bit here, but.
So why don't we?
I wasn't sure until he actually answered my question. So.
Okay. So why don't we instruct Mr. Desiderio to work with Mr. Mittermeier in making this happen?
Okay, I understood. Mayor, what I don't understand is the way it presently reads is it says that the purchaser or lessor.
Right.
Okay. So, but you want to break out commercial.
I tell you why, because I hear so many stories of landlords telling prospective tenants, "Oh, don't worry, your business is suitable for this place," and it's just, I just think by having it on the person who's leasing it, they have to come down here and find out for themselves.
All right, let me take a look at that.
Because believe it or not, there are some owners that don't tell the truth.
Unscrupulous landlords, I find it hard to believe.
My only hesitation is if we dispatch with this issue, we're going to lose another 5 people from the meeting. And when we dealt with the softball, 5 people left. So if we keep doing that, there's not going to be anybody here. But so it seems to me we have agreement to ask you, Mr. Desiderio, to move forward to make the switch to a seller. Okay. Okay?
Yep.
Post office. Okay. On October 28th, the post office sent a letter to me that said that they have looked at 3 properties, 1830 Springfield Avenue, 1505 Springfield Avenue, and 220 Rutgers. And these were properties to move the operation of the main post office, and that operation is both the sorting operation and retail. After looking at those 3 properties, they rejected 2. 1505 Springfield Avenue, the reason time to complete and the expense. And they also looked at 220, and the reason they rejected that was time to complete and the expense. So, pursuant to their regulations, no final action to acquire the property can take place for 30 days from October 28th, so that after October 28th, they will pursue where they'll secure a lease. It does say that any member of the community may offer written comments on this property. So we will send this information to the College Hill Neighborhood Association, and we'll also post this letter on our website. The other thing that I wanted to mention is that we have submitted, we received 8 responses to our request for qualifications, and we interviewed all 8. We have made that a list now 3. We have submitted to them each a request for proposals. That was issued on November 1st. The due date for those proposals is December 2nd. We have expanded the Economic Development Committee. which consists of 3 members of the Township Committee, which is Ms. Leventhal, Mr. Ryan, and myself. Additional regular members that come to the meetings are Mr. Manning, Mr. Desiderio, Ms. De Palma, and Mr. Carlson in his position as Planning Board Chair. And we've expanded that to invite Mr. Malavasi, who is our engineer, to that expanded committee, Mark Lobauer, who is our retail consultant. We are in the process of hiring a consulting architect to be on that committee. And we've also invited Julie Doran, who's the village manager, who is, we're waiting to a confirmation if she's going to join us. So that committee, which is now 11 people, will be the committee that interviews these 3 finalists and looks at their proposals and does the due diligence to move this process forward. We expect to stay on schedule and do this work in the month of December and try to come back to the Township Committee by the end of December or the very beginning of 2014. So that process is moving forward, and I wanted to just make sure everyone knew what we were up to. The one other item that we think is necessary for us to move forward is to engage a consultant to do a Phase 1 environmental assessment, and I'll turn that over to Mr. Desiderio.
Yes, Mayor. During the course of talking to the 8 people who companies who responded to the RFQ, the issue of environmental contamination was always discussed. It's my recommendation that the Township Committee move forward with a Phase 1 investigation, environmental investigation. A Phase 1 investigation does not involve any intrusive testing. It basically is a record check through DEP and a visual inspection of the property to determine what, if any, potential contaminants there might be. That could include asbestos in the ceilings or the floors. Our hope is that that's not the case, that over the course of the years, the Postal and the Postal Workers Union may have gotten rid of any contaminants that may have been in that building. So that would be helpful. I don't know how the building is heated with regard to oil tanks. That's always a concern. But that would be the scope of the Phase 1. We've done these obviously in the past. Mr. Malavasi's office can make recommendations to us. Matrix is one of the companies that we've used, and there have been others as well. So Ms. De Palma was going to reach out to the postal people to get their permission to have an inspection done of the property of Phase 1, walkthrough, etc. So assuming that the governing body is A, authorizes it, and B, that we have the funds to do it, it would be my recommendation that we move forward with a Phase 1.
We get a motion to that effect?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Call the roll.
Mr. Brownlee?
Yes.
Mrs. Larrier?
Yes.
Ms. Leventhal?
Yes.
Mr. Ryan?
Yes.
Mayor DeLuca?
Yes, thank you.
Mayor, if I may, Mr. Manning will see Mr. Malavasi before I will. If you ask him to talk to me about who we might use and see if we can get some proposals. Thank you.
Okay, anything else on questions or anything? We'll move forward.
Mayor, the only other thing I would report to you that I did receive in today's mail the signed lease extension with the post office.
Oh, that's right. And that lease extension is through January 9th, 2014.
That is correct, Mayor.
Okay. Number 4, Clinton Avenue commuter parking. I've been talking to a couple of residents on the corner of Clinton Avenue and Ridgewood. They are becoming inundated again with commuter parking. When we looked at this in the past, we found most of those commuters were from out of town, and they would like some relief. The relief that we granted to Ridgewood Terrace is to ban parking from 9 a.m. to 10 a.m. 1 hour. And that effectively prevents commuters from parking, because unless you go to work and turn around and come right back. You're not going to be able to move your car. So what I would suggest is I wanted to get a sense if you were open to doing something similar on Clinton that we did on Ridgewood and Ridgewood Terrace, and move forward with that, making that happen. Yes.
I visited the area, and I see that the jitney stops right there. So I can understand, not that I agree with it, but I understand why people are parking on Clinton. However, would we be moving people, just moving people another block?
We might. We might.
As
you know,
has been happening.
People, I don't think, you know, we agree to leave our streets available for parking for people who live in the community. And if this is a situation where they're going to move to Mountain or somewhere, we're just going to have to keep addressing it.
I wondered if we should just do the whole.
Well, I think you know, there is a certain degree of intrusion by limiting parking, because now people on the block are going to be limited from parking too. Yeah, so that's a whole nother thing we have to work out there. But I think unless this is driven from the neighborhood, I think we should leave it. But on this, I think we should do the same thing we do at Ridgewood Terrace.
I mean, eventually, you know, the more inconvenient it is and the further people have to walk, the less attractive it is to park there.
So they'll maybe go to the garage in Milburn. Okay, I will move forward with that and come back to you. Residential fences, 4 feet, 6 feet. Ms. Leventhal?
Okay. I had reported at the last meeting that the code subcommittee met and is recommending that we leave fences at 4 feet with some adjustments. We had 2 meetings. Mr. Bob Mittermeier was there, Cesar Guerrero was there, and we looked at the letters from both Mr. Gonzalez and the anonymous listing of fences over 4 feet that we received. We looked at our ordinance. We looked at the experience of the Zoning Board of Adjustment over 4.5 years, having heard cases at an average of 2 per year. They denied 2, but they approved 3 where there was commercial property contiguous. Those were for higher than 6-foot fences. 1 school property next door, 2 with retaining walls, 1 where there was a person with a disability, and 1 was, I'm not remembering this one, but I have a replacement with a path. We looked at ordinances from surrounding towns, talked to the chief. I talked to the chief and quickly to the chair of the Zoning Board of Adjustment. Our discussion focused on height, locations, and fence design. Our recommendation, although that was not unanimous, is to leave the ordinance except to add that 6-foot fences are permissible in addition to the times when the adjacent property is commercial, which is already there, but we want to add when it's adjacent to certain other types of properties such as school district, other schools, playgrounds and fields, municipal property, churches, New Jersey Transit property, South Mountain Reservation, Maplewood Country Club, and other incongruent uses. And in addition, allow a 6-foot fence in the event of a disabled minor. We feel that safety is actually better, the line of sight and the scaling if necessary by a police officer. We like the aesthetics of the feel of the open community, and that it fosters neighborliness and communication, which is a hallmark of Maplewood, and especially would allow for communication in the event of a safety issue. what we would see is leaving the ordinance at 4 feet. The code staff over a period of time would do a survey of fences that are not permitted, that did not receive a variance, that are there illegally over the 4-foot height. And the owners would be asked to take those fences down. So I like to open it to discussion, especially for the committee members, which are Mrs. Larry and Mr. Brownlee, because it was not a 3-0 vote. So I want other colleagues to hear the thinking of the other committee members.
I was one of the dissents that Ms. Leventhal referred to. I was amenable to changing it to 6 foot. The people who contacted me regarding this indicated that due to the process involved in getting the variance, it dissuaded a number of people from actually even going forward with the process. So in fact, the numbers in terms of what were actually applied for and granted may be actually an undercount vis-a-vis what maybe the desire of people might be. I also felt that the 6 foot, or the 4 foot current thing, you know, people have bushes that are, or trees that are well in excess of 4 feet, and so the idea that by keeping it at 4 feet, it would somehow enhance the safety or the line of sight and things. I thought that wasn't necessarily a, you know, there's other barriers to sight as well, and I didn't really think that this would be exacerbating that. So those are a couple of my thoughts in terms of why I felt that the going to 6 foot was also a good thing. And also the other thing was, since we have quite a few fences that are in excess of the 4 foot designation now, the last point that was made that we would need to ask residents to take those fences down. First of all, you know, what things we actually have records of, I thought might prove to be problematic. So again, just logistically, I didn't have a problem with the 6 foot from an aesthetic standpoint, and I thought that keeping the 4 foot designation might be difficult from an enforcement standpoint. And again, wasn't really, I'll just leave it at that. Thank you.
Ms. Larrier?
Well, as one of the yay votes to keep the ordinance as it is, the things that came before us were pretty much outlined very well by Mr. Brownlee. I was not compelled by the fact that there are bushes that are well in excess of 4 feet. There may be, but you can get through a bush. It's difficult to get through a 6 foot fence if you need to. I am not compelled by the fact that people are put off because they have to come before the zoning board. That's why we have a zoning board. That's why we have the ordinance. The ordinance is there and the zoning board is there in case you have a compelling reason not to have to comply with the zoning ordinance. So I think it's there. If you have a compelling reason, you should come before the zoning board. I was compelled by the fact that we did go out to Chief Semino of the police department, and he came back to us with 4 foot fences are easier to maintain safety. And when he goes out to his CEU courses, they suggest 4 foot fences. In fact, they suggest 4 foot open fences. However, we're not going to go back and ask everyone with a fence to make it an open fence. As far as those who have already erected a 6 foot fence, That also did not compel me, because I don't believe that just because you broke the law and got away with it means you should be able to continue to break the law in perpetuity, I think is the word I want. If not, I'm sure I'll be corrected. So I, in fact, did vote to keep 4-foot fences with the changes that were stipulated by Ms. Leventhal.
Do you have anything to say, Mr. Ryan?
No, I don't have anything to say.
Okay. I think that we ought to consider 6 feet. The issue of breaking the law, part of the difficulty here is for some period of time, our building department allowed 6 feet fences to go up.
I just ask clarification. Allowed by being passive or
allowed by an interpretation of the ordinance.
Oh.
The ordinance talks about a fence greater than 16 feet in length. You don't have to go. If you erect a fence greater than 16 feet in length, you have to go make an application. There was an interpretation, and you can correct me, Mr. Desideri, but there was an interpretation by our building department that putting up 2 6-foot by 8-foot already made fences was permitted.
That is correct.
That's correct, isn't it?
Yes.
So a number of people relied on that interpretation. In other words, going to Home Depot and buying an already made fence that's 6 feet high, that's 8 feet wide, buying 2 of those and putting them up next to each other, you were permitted to do that.
I could make the stipulation then that as we are finding 6-foot fences, if it could be proven that you did this, for instance, you have a fence the length of less than, what was it, 16 feet?
16 feet.
16 feet, then that could be a reason why our building department then could say, okay, we'll let you keep it. If you have a 6-foot fence that's 24 feet, it's fairly clear that you didn't get permission for that.
Well, I don't I don't have as much certainty as you do on whether people got permission or not. You know, I'm very concerned about saying, you know, we're going to go tell all these folks that may have gotten some signal from our building department that it was okay to go tell them to take the fence down now.
Yeah, I'm not interested in doing it.
Because I don't think there's any way that you can prove if you were told that or not. You know, there's no records. People called up and that's what they were told on the phone. You can, you know, if you put up the 2 things, you're okay. So.
That's the 2 things. That's the 16 feet.
Right.
What about the 24 feet?
Just I think that, and honestly, where I would maybe split it a bit is, I do think, and I do hear what the chief is saying as far as jumping over fences and what have you, but in particular, I would be interested in looking for some relaxation of the 4-foot fence on the rear property. And I'll tell you, there's, in areas where I live, where you have tight houses, those rear properties are pretty bad. And I wouldn't mind having a little buffer between me and my neighbors of 6 feet, because it's just, you know, from an aesthetic and even for some security reasons, having 6 foot along that rear line is something that I would be interested in seeing.
My recollection is that we discussed having that Mr. Mittermeier did discuss having
yes,
the rear property.
To the front line.
Right.
The rear line, he was in favor of 6 feet.
Right.
But, well, discussing this with him, but I had no knowledge that there were 16 by 6.
Yeah, no problem.
Why don't we, you know, go ahead, Mr. Ryan.
I mean, ultimately, we referred this question to our Code Enforcement Committee, right? And our Code Enforcement Committee has a recommendation to put in front of us for us to vote on. Right? Or
I'm not sure. I'm not sure it is. I'm
just trying to figure out what the next step is.
I'm not sure.
I mean, we had our recommendation, but now I'm hearing things that never came up. And, no, I don't know my own
Well,
thinking.
let's
I'm
do
just
this.
so pissed now. I don't.
Let's kick it back to the code enforcement.
Yeah.
But I think, you know, the part of the difficulty with the recommendation is that, it talks about I can't even say it now. You know, you talked about the same thing. You have to have a standard that's measurable.
Right.
And I'm not sure we do yet.
It's what?
Measurable. You're allowed. I mean, even so you also talked about a disabled young person. And what happens if that family moves? Do they have to take the fence down?
I thought the ordinance said that you didn't have to take the fence down. That was my understanding of the ordinance.
I think the way that it's written right now, you don't have to take it down, but if another person comes in and they want to do something, then...
No, but if you didn't get the variance, are you saying that you have to get a variance for a disabled minor?
No, it would be written into the ordinance.
I mean, if we found ourselves in a situation where people were getting information where they were being told that a certain thing was okay, I think it'd be very difficult for us to go back and...
Right.
No, I agree with
you. But I thought that's what I heard you recommending.
Well, we never heard this information.
No, it's new.
Yes,
we
that
never
was a
knew this.
recommendation. So, I'm more interested in going forward than going backwards.
Of course.
So I think, you know, the difficulty I have with the recommendation from the committee is that it has the punitive aspect of it, of going in there and then we have to sort out who was told what, and, you know, on what basis they made some decisions.
I have to say that, and I really want to underscore this, that we had no information that permits were given.
No, they were not permits.
Or words were stated that you can put up a 6 foot by 6 feet.
There was an interpretation made, and I think you can go back
and... That never came up, and in terms of, I mean, we feel strongly enough about the 4 feet and face the conflict of should people be required to take down anything larger, aside from this whole thing, verbal thing that was going on for years, apparently. Either people have to take them down, or we're looking the other way, which is not what government's about either. So it's...
That's not your option.
No, right.
You have an option. Your option is to change the ordinance or enforce the ordinance.
Right.
Yes, exactly, exactly. But we did feel strongly about the 4 feet.
All right, well, let's kick it back to your committee. I think we need to next time come back with a recommendation. You should need to get it to us before the meeting so we can digest it, because it's very hard to listen to you and understand what would be in a motion and what would not be in a motion.
Well, that would have to be worked out with Mr. Desiderio.
Well, I'm not talking about an ordinance. I'm talking about, here's a list of the 5 things we want in the ordinance, and here's, you know, what's in an ordinance and what's in the implementation, you know, or the enforcement.
The committee
There's 2
recommends
different
no
things.
change, or the committee recommends this be changed, or, you know.
It seems to me, from
From
listening to Ms. Leventhal, in fairness to her, you may come back with 3 different opinions from the committee.
That may be.
Yeah,
So you may just have to put all of that in writing.
But it's also, there's also, Mr. Mittermeier has an opinion too.
But all that's valuable discussion.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
If at the end of a committee meeting, and, you know, the committee's unanimous and the building department is too, that's useful information too.
Okay, well,
Because right now, we're split. And at some point, Mr. Ryan's going to have to decide what he wants to do. But, you know, and I'm not necessarily in favor of 6 feet fences all around. I am particularly interested, and you know, one of your exceptions was not an adjoining municipality.
Yeah.
And I think that to me is an important thing, because we are next to some municipalities where code enforcement is not as highly valued as here. And people are allowed to park cars in those backyards without license plates. They're allowed to store tires back there. And being on a municipal property or a border, I might want to have the right to put a 6-foot fence up just to buffer that.
Well, I've even seen that not on the border, for that matter.
Well,
so,
yeah, right.
But we have a right.
No, understood. But I'm saying the same rationale would hold for me in those cases as well. So.
Okay, we'll meet again. See you back here sometime soon. Oh.
All right. Well, you know, this is not going to happen before the end of the year. So you know, it's not.
Positive it's not.
Right. All right. Consent agenda. Are we adding the minutes?
Yes, Mayor. Closed and open.
For October 15th?
October 15th.
Okay. Can we get a motion on the consent agenda to add the closed and open minutes?
So moved.
For the 15th of October. Any discussion? Please call the roll.
Wait.
Yep.
17th, 15th, was I here?
You were not.
You were not. So
you were not.
So I'm abstaining.
You were not.
You were not. We missed you.
Dreadfully.
Oh, I didn't know you cared.
We missed you.
Dreadfully.
Mr. Brownlee.
So what I'm abstaining?
You're abstaining on
the minutes.
On the minutes of the meeting, otherwise you can vote.
I don't know if you can split it out.
Yes, you can.
Yes.
Okay, so I'm abstaining from the minutes, but I'm okay on the rest.
Okay.
The consent agenda.
Mrs. Larrier?
Yes, on everything.
Ms. Leventhal?
Yes.
Mr. Ryan?
Yes.
Mayor
Yes.
DeLuca?
Okay. We have our second public comment period. Is there anyone who wants to address the Township Committee?
Fred Perfetta, 1 Hickory Drive, Mayor, members of the Township Committee. I didn't come down here to talk about this issue, but you've intrigued me with this parking issue on Clinton. And I was a member of the Transportation Advisory Committee, and I recall when we would decide these matters, there was often the sentiment that, well, you know, the non-residents are parking on this street, now they're parking on this street, now they're parking on this street. And one of the issues always was, well, what do we have really against non-residents? I mean, what's really going on? What's the policy behind the parking restrictions aimed at non-residents? Because what's really happening is we're pushing it, we're almost to Milburn now, if you do this on Clinton. And, you know, and in effect what's happening is the streets that are closest to the station, where the permit parking is, are taking a big load. Whereas we seem to have the sentiment, well, streets like Clinton, which don't have permit parking, shouldn't have any parking on them at all during the day. And I'm wondering why, you know, except for residents of the street, of course. But if we're trying to keep non-residents off of streets like Clinton, that's what this seems to be aimed at. I'm wondering about the policy behind that. I mean, also, because I mean, it's a little like, it's not the same legal issues, but it's somewhat similar to towns which are on the shore or have border lakes, saying, well, this is for residents. I mean, these are public streets. People use our public streets to get to public transportation. That's what they're doing. They're parking to get to New Jersey Transit. There's a good chance they'd be patronizing our businesses in town while they're parked there during some of the time. And I'm just not sure that it's, if we're doing it as, if it's a townwide policy to keep non-residents from parking on our streets, that's actually permissible. Because that's what that's the policy behind this. Now, I did this for many years on the Transportation Advisory Committee and on this committee. But I'm just beginning to wonder, as I see this go to the borders, whether it's really proper policy in the end. That's my 2 cents.
Okay, thanks. Anyone else want to address the Township Committee? Okay, we will close the second public comment period. We received the Construction Code Official Report for September 2013. Administrative reports, Mr. Manning.
Yes, I'd like to, as you are aware, our services for IT provided by Rutgers University will cease on December 31st. My assistant has been looking for options for us, and one of the options which have been discussed previously, particularly by Mr. Brownlee, was to see if one of our neighboring municipalities could help us out. Well, the Village of South Orange is willing to provide us IT services. I provided you with a scope of services which basically mirrors our agreement with Rutgers University, and I'm asking for your approval to move forward in developing a shared service agreement so that on January 1st we can have IT services provided for a fee from the Village of South Orange.
Is there a motion to that effect?
So moved.
Second.
Second.
Any discussion?
It's great to have another shared service.
Okay, let's call the roll.
Mr. Brownlee?
Yes.
Mrs. Larrier?
Yes.
Mrs. Leventhal?
Yes.
Mr. Ryan?
Yes.
Mayor DeLuca?
Yes, thank you.
That's the end of, I have nothing else to report unless there are questions.
Could you just please give us a status update on the RFP for the 60 Woodland Road?
Yes, it will be announced on Thursday, so it'll be available this Thursday.
Great, thank you.
Okay.
I'm not sure if it will be from you or from Mr. Correa. The website statistics that were distributed recently, which were, I don't know if you can give a sort of a highlight of that. I don't know if you're in a position to do that right now. You have the statistics on hand? You didn't bring them with you? Okay.
But I think that the important part of that was our mobile app is very successful. We're getting a lot of hits from our mobile app, and also the amount of visits that we get every day has been increasing. It's significant. We have a good website. Oh, you have it? Okay. Well.
Big suitcase you carry. You must carry a big suitcase.
In terms of the mobile application, if you can see with the 2 reports that I sent you, there's now a total of over 1,100 downloads for the application total, which is
Daily.
Right about 1 in every 6 families in town, which is a pretty good stat. These numbers continue to go up. Some of the issues that were addressed in the past about compatibility and user interface by some residents have been addressed, so we're continuing to move forward to make sure that the app works better for our residents. In terms of the website, we continue to have a lot of visits, especially the highest visit this past month of October was on October 18th. We averaged right around 700 visits a day on just people that go in there on the site, and then they go visit some other pages within our website. The average time that people that visit the website stay on the site is roughly around 3 minutes. That's the average. So we should find out sometime this week from the Rutgers Municipal Public Information Contest. We submitted a whole bunch of information, and hopefully we receive some good news later this week.
And is the big tick, the uptick, is that when we put out the notice for Maplewood leaflet?
No, that's actually on October 18th. The leaflet went out earlier, so I'm trying to think. We must have had something important or something big on the 18th. It may have been when we announced same-sex marriage licenses, or when we publicized that.
Oh, right, it's right around there. Yeah, right. Okay. Right. That was it.
That was it.
Right.
Excellent. Thank you. Appreciate it. It's good to see that that amount of activity.
And I do have one other comment to make about the mobile app. The League of Municipalities has contacted us about writing an article about our mobile app and how it developed it forward. So.
Excellent. Thank you.
Maybe you can get Mr. Brownlee to help you on that, the article.
Yes, of course.
Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Desiderio.
I have no report, Mayor.
You ain't getting away that easy. I have a question for you. We had a gentleman come here last week from Elmwood Ave talking about this change that Irvington made about parking on the street. And there are some things here that I would like you to check out. It talks about any bus or non-conforming van vehicle with a passenger capacity of more than 15 persons. Did you get a copy of this?
I did.
Okay. Okay, well, I don't want you to answer now, but maybe you can come back and explain to us if we have any, if we ought to think about, I just don't understand what this means.
Okay. I'll try to read it and try to get an interpretation.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
That's the Irvington ordinance, correct?
Yes.
I still have no report.
Okay, anything from Mr. Desiderio? Ms. Fritzen?
Okay, tomorrow is Election Day again. General Election Day. Polls are open 6 a.m. to 8 p.m. at all of our polling locations in Maplewood. And I wanted to report that we're up to 17,550 voters in the township. So we went up about 1,000 voters. Veterans Day, our 10th annual Veterans Day, is next Monday, and that'll be here on in this room, November 11th, 11 o'clock, and we expect to have a really nice program as usual with refreshments, actually lunch for the veterans following in the lobby. We had our volunteer dinner since we've met last on October 22nd, and we had well over 100 people attend, and I think it was a huge success. And the Township Committee gave out proclamations to every volunteer, so I think it was a nice program, a nice night. And then I just wanted to comment that I would be remiss if I didn't say the amount of work that certainly I'm the registrar, but the deputy registrar is Sonia Harrison, the deputy township clerk, and she has done a real nice job coordinating. We registered 23 same-sex couples for the marriages that we had here at Town Hall on the 21st. We had the first one being at 12 noon, some in the afternoon, and on the outside plaza at 5 o'clock on the 21st, we had a group wedding and a nice program. So I would be really remiss if I didn't tell you the amount of work that Sonia's put into this. And it's been really, really successful. I think we just somehow messed up on one wedding where we weren't ready, but we were able to cover that. So again, it was really a seamless operation.
Yeah, I want to thank you because we got resistance from the state up until the last minute, and when we met by phone, Mr. Manning, Mr. Desiderio, yourself, and I met by phone, and we decided that it was the right thing to do and the legal thing to do was to start issuing marriage license that morning of the 18th. So that would have been the reason why we had that huge spike in the web traffic. Yeah. So I know you got a lot of pressure from the state personally, and I just want to thank you. And we were ahead of the curve, and now everything is done. So we've done over 20 weddings. I've done about 17 weddings, same-sex weddings myself, so.
Thanks.
Okay.
I'd just like to add that in relationship to that, I did file a complaint with Vital Statistics.
Oh, for hanging up on you?
Yes, and I never got the courtesy of a response from the director.
Right.
So, just goes to show.
Yeah, Mr. Desiderio called down there to clarify some things, and they hung up on him.
That was after they said they were going to yank my license.
Right. So,
Gee,
okay.
Gee, I'm terribly surprised.
Reports from elected officials. Ms. Leventhal.
I'm very happy to announce that Maplewood has attained Sustainable Jersey's Silver certification. I'd like to thank Mr. Manning, thank the Green Team, and everyone, Bob McCoy, and Environmental Advisory Committee. It was quite an undertaking and very nicely a successful one. We are one of 15 towns in the state with over 400 registered in the program, and we're the only town in Essex County to have the silver certification. So we'll be accepting the award at League Convention in a couple of weeks. Thank you very much. I will be participating this coming Saturday in the Civic Engagement Institute that's being sponsored by the Community Coalition on Race. The agenda for Saturday morning is to talk about how the government is organized in each of the two towns, what our major issues are, and what our boards and committees and volunteer opportunities are. So I'm happy to be doing this. I would ask my colleagues to please let me know which of your boards or committees have vacancies so that I can actually bring current data to the participants. They make a commitment to serve for at least 6 months on either a civic or a not-for-profit, a volunteer activity within their town. So I think it's important to have information there for them. They can start thinking about what they'd like to do. The following Saturday is an exhibit, if you would, from all different nonprofits and both governments in terms of trying to sign people up as volunteers. I'll be at that also. Have any further input, let me know. Thank you. That's it.
Well, you didn't say about, I understand that you have an exhibit at 1978 Springfield Avenue. Is that correct?
Well, I'm a member of 1978 as a supporting member and have been for quite a long time. And yes,
you have
got the courage
to photograph is up of
I
yours?
have 2 photographs.
2 photographs.
One I developed in of Maplewood, actually. It's about a little bird's eye view of Maplewood. Yeah.
Right. So go see that bird's eye view up there at 1978 Springfield. Mr. Ryan, oh, excuse me, you're busy?
I have no report, Mayor.
Okay. Mrs. Larrier.
No report, Mayor.
Mr. Brownlee.
Just that I have my office hours next Tuesday, November 12th, at the Hilton branch of the Maplewood Memorial Library from 7 o'clock to 8 o'clock p.m. So I'll be there to answer any residents' questions, anybody who wants to come and chat. I'm assuming you're going to talk about College Hill.
I wasn't. Why don't you?
You were or not?
I was not.
You were not? Okay. Actually, also wanted to commend, I don't know if I should say names, she's in the audience, who we attended a meeting of the College Hill Neighborhood Association earlier, and it was a very good to see so many people out and to have them have the opportunity to ask their questions directly. Myself, I was there with Mayor DeLuca and Ms. Larrier and Chief Semino, and we had an opportunity to interact with the residents and to answer their questions on a wide range of different topics. And I'd like to feel that they excuse me, felt that it was very informative, and felt that they were getting the types of responses to the questions that they were looking for. So hopefully we'll have more opportunities to do that going forward. I'm very much an advocate for having as many neighborhood associations in town as possible, and it's good to see that this organization has been revived, and hopefully that'll continue. That's my report.
And we did have a complaint of one home on one of the streets there, and yes, we did get it cleaned up. I was there Saturday, and it is cleaned up, so that's good. So have to keep an eye on it. Maybe a little bit more needs to be done, but at least initially some of that stuff has been cleaned. You got to start on it. Okay, I have 4 things, but I'm going to do 2 other things. One, I want to remind everyone about voting tomorrow. I'm not going to count that as one of mine, but I just want to remind tomorrow's voting, 6 a.m. to 8 p.m.
Correct.
Vote at your regular place. We won't have any Sandy, no power problems. Everything's good.
A year ago.
So please come out to vote tomorrow, and also...
And remember that it's also the school board election.
It's also the school board election. And then our next meeting is Monday, again, on the 18th of November, because the next day is the League of Municipalities, and we are heading down there for various meetings and networking opportunities. And my 4 items: 1, I have office hours next Tuesday also, here at Town Hall from 7 to 8 p.m. Number 2, I received a letter from the County Economic Development Office stating that we are to receive $102,000 for the Americans with Disability Act improvements to the Orchard Park restrooms.
Okay.
So, just got that. So you can have that. And November 16th is Talk to the Township Committee, and this is going to be a special treat because there's going to be 2 of you there.
Actually, there's going to be 3.
Oh, you're going to be there?
Oh, yeah, the other plan got changed. Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. Jerry's going to be there with you. But
He heard that
I heard it was going to be fun because you're
yeah, no, clearly. I'm going to be in New York in an all-day meeting. I would prefer to be there. But so Talk to the Township Committee. It'll be in front of the post office,
yes,
right? Yes,
yes.
9 to 12. And then the last thing I wanted to bring up is we had a meeting last week following up. We're just trying to put together everything where we are with the Brook Lane, Brook Path. So we're putting together some ideas, and we're planning to have a community meeting in early December. One thing that did come up that we thought would be useful is to start the process of getting the easement from the Board of Education for the land, so that when we're ready to go, that doesn't become a hang-up. So we wanted to authorize Mr. Desiderio to move forward in contacting the school board attorney so that you could begin doing what has to be done. And then when we're ready to move forward, we will have that work completed.
You need a motion for that, Mayor?
Yeah.
So moved.
Well, okay, part of that.
Let's get the motion.
Well,
so moved.
Just give me a second, because I think we're going to need a survey. We're
Okay.
going to need to retain a surveyor.
All right, but let's do this then. Let's get the motion to give you the authorization to do what you need to get done. Okay. If you need a survey or whatever else to get.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Please call the roll.
Mr. Brownlee?
Yes.
Mrs. Larrier?
Yes.
Ms. Leventhal?
Yes.
Mr. Ryan?
Yes.
Mayor DeLuca?
Yes. So that'll start, and whatever you need to get that to happen, okay? And so we will have this meeting. It'll be at the Bergdorf Center in December, and at the meeting we'll have the plants that are going to be, display of the plants that are going to be built, discussion of what we're going to be doing with the path improvements, any potential lighting that might come up, things like that. So that is still moving forward, slowly but surely. And unless anyone has anything else, how about a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. We'll see you on Monday, the 18th of November.